The smell of burnt coffee is still in the air when my phone rings for the 27th time this week. I know who it is before I even look. I always know. I let it ring. Outside, the birch trees along the back fence have gone orange. October in Sudbury does that. Strips everything down to what it is. No pretending. Just color, then nothing. I pulled my cardigan tighter and watched a leaf let go of the branch it had been holding all summer. It didn't fight it. I thought about that for a long time. My name is not important. What I am is a mother. What I was for 31 years was a wife. What I have become somewhere in the last 18 months is a woman other people think they can manage. I raised my daughter in this house, the one I'm sitting in now, with the cracked tile in the kitchen I keep meaning to fix, and the rose bushes out front that her father planted the spring she was born. Lucinda, I called her, after my own grandmother, who came to this country with nothing but a name and the kind of stubbornness that looks from the outside like dignity. My grandmother would have known what to do in this situation. She would have known it immediately and without hesitation. I took a little longer. Her father, my husband, passed in 2019. Prostate cancer. He was 64 years old and he was supposed to have more time. We were supposed to have more time. He left me the house, the car, and a life insurance payout that I put into a GIC because I didn't know what else to do with grief made liquid. I kept the garden. I kept the rose bushes. I kept going to St. Andrew's on Sunday mornings because it was the only place I didn't have to explain myself. Lucinda was 32 when her father died. She came home for the funeral, cried beautifully, helped me choose flowers, and left 5 days later. That was fair. She had her own life. She had met someone, a man named Brent, through her work in Toronto, and things were moving quickly. I told myself that was a good thing, that she was happy, that her father would have been glad. I believed that for almost a year. The shift was so gradual I couldn't point to where it began. The phone calls got shorter. The visits got less frequent. When she did call, Brent was always nearby. I could hear him in the background, sometimes laughing, sometimes just breathing. She started using words she'd never used with me before. Things like moving forward and going forward, and that's not really feasible right now, Mom. Small corporate words that didn't sound like my daughter. I told myself it was the relationship. I told myself it was normal. I told myself a lot of things to keep from seeing what was right in front of me. The first time the house came up was March of last year. Lucinda called on a Wednesday evening, which was unusual. She never called midweek. And after about 4 minutes of weather talk, she said, very casually, as though she was asking about my recipe for butter tarts, that she and Brent were thinking about their future, about property, about how the market in Toronto was impossible, about how maybe, in the interest of family and practicality, they might consider purchasing a second home or eventually a primary residence somewhere more affordable, Sudbury, perhaps, in proximity to me. It sounded like care. It sounded like my daughter wanting to be closer to her mother. I let myself feel that. What she actually said underneath all of it was, "Have you thought about what you're going to do with the house, Mom?" I said I had no plans to do anything with the house. I said I planned to live in it. She laughed in that way she has, light and quick, like it dissolves what you said, and moved on. I sat at my kitchen table after we hung up and looked at the rose bushes through the window. It was still winter. They were just sticks in the dark. But I knew what they were. I didn't tell anyone about that conversation. I filed it somewhere in the back of my mind, the way you file things you hope won't become something. The engagement was announced in April. Lucinda called on a Sunday this time, which was more her. She was happy, genuinely, I thought. She talked quickly, the way she used to when she was small and had something to show me. Brent had proposed on a rooftop restaurant downtown. She sent me a photo of the ring. I told her it was beautiful. I told her I was happy for her. Both things were true. She asked me to help plan the wedding. I said yes before she finished the sentence. For the next 8 months, I was more a part of my daughter's life than I had been in years. I drove to Toronto 3 times. I sat in bridal boutiques and gave opinions about lace and tried on mother of the bride dresses that made me feel both old and necessary. I helped address 214 invitations by hand because Lucinda said handwritten felt more personal. I paid for the rehearsal dinner. 46 people at a restaurant on King Street that charged $22 for a side salad. I didn't mind. I want to be clear about that. I did not mind. I was her mother. This was her wedding. I was glad to do it. The trouble didn't show itself until about 6 weeks before the ceremony, when Lucinda mentioned, again, very casually, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of Riesling and her laptop open, that Brent had been talking to a financial advisor, that they were thinking about long-term stability, that there were some tax benefits, apparently, to having property held in certain ways. She opened a document on her screen and turned it toward me. It was a transfer of title for this house to her name, or, more precisely, to her name and Brent's name jointly. She said it made sense from an estate planning perspective. She said it would save money on probate. She said the advisor, and she used his full name and credentials the way people do when they want a thing to sound more legitimate than it feels, had strongly recommended it. I looked at the document. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the photo of her father on the sideboard, the one from our anniversary trip to Cape Breton, where he's laughing at something off camera and his eyes are completely full of life. I told her I'd think about it. She closed the laptop and smiled, and we talked about table centerpieces for the rest of the evening. I did not stop thinking about it. I called my friend Ruth Ann. We've been friends since our daughters were in the same grade 4 class, which means we have been friends for over 30 years, and she is the only person on earth I trust completely. And I told her what Lucinda had shown me. Ruth Ann was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Don't sign anything before you talk to your own lawyer. Not hers, not Brent's, yours." I said I didn't have a lawyer. She said, "Get one. I found him through my accountant. His name was Mr. Okonkwo, not young, which I appreciated, and not the kind of man who explains things slowly to older women to make them feel like children." He read the document Lucinda had shown me. He asked me several questions. He was quiet for a moment afterward, the way Ruth Ann had been, and then he said something I have thought about every day since. He said, "This document does not protect you. It removes you." He explained it plainly. If I transferred title, I would no longer legally own my home. I could be asked to leave it. If my daughter's marriage ended, the house would be part of the matrimonial asset pool. If something happened to Lucinda, Brent would have a legal claim. I would have no recourse. The tax benefits she'd mentioned were real but marginal. They would save a few $1,000s in a future probate process at the cost of giving away everything now, while I was still living, still here, still needing a place to be. I asked him if people actually signed documents like this. He said, "More than you would think, usually because they love someone." I left his office and sat in my car in the parking garage on Larch Street for about 20 minutes. The concrete was gray and the fluorescent light above me buzzed faintly, and I thought about my grandmother coming to this country with nothing, and about my husband planting rose bushes in the spring, and about my daughter's face when she turned the laptop toward me, and about how much of my life had been spent making sure other people had what they needed before I thought about myself. I thought, not this time. I didn't sign anything. I also didn't tell Lucinda what I'd decided or that I'd seen a lawyer at all. I said I was still thinking. She accepted that. The wedding was close enough that she had other things to focus on. The ceremony was held on a Saturday in November, a venue outside the city, one of those converted barn properties with Edison bulbs and white linen and a catering team that moved like choreography. It was genuinely beautiful. I will give it that. Lucinda was radiant. Brent looked like a man who had gotten exactly what he wanted and knew it. I wore the gray dress we had chosen together in September. I had my hair done. I sat in the front row on the left side, which is where the groom's family was supposed to be, and I thought there had been a seating error, but then I realized there was no error. I had been placed there deliberately. The photographer's instructions put the bride's family, me, my sister-in-law Paulette, my late husband's brother and his wife, at the far end of a long row, half obscured by the floral installation. I told myself it was oversight. I am very practiced at telling myself things. The reception was held in the barn itself. There were 160 guests. I knew perhaps 15 of them. I sat at a round table near the back with Paulette and her husband Gordon, and a couple from Brent's side named, I never caught the name properly, and a woman in her 60s who turned out to be Brent's aunt from Hamilton and who spent the first 40 minutes telling me about her kitchen renovation. I did not see my daughter between the ceremony and the dinner. Not once. During the dinner, I watched her move through the room with the ease of someone who had planned every moment of the evening and felt entirely at home in it. She stopped at every table on Brent's side. She made it halfway around the room on mine. She did not make it to my table. Her toast was gracious. She thanked Brent. She thanked his parents by name. She thanked the venue coordinator. She thanked, and I'm quoting as exactly as I can remember, everyone who helped make this day possible. She did not say my name. I sat with my hands in my lap, and I looked at the Edison bulbs strung above us, and I breathed steadily, and I did not let my face do what my face wanted to do. It was around 9:30 when I saw her moving toward me. I genuinely thought, she was coming to apologize, or at least to sit with me for a moment, to be my daughter for 5 minutes in the middle of all of this. She stopped at the edge of the table and leaned down, and she said quietly enough that Paulette couldn't quite hear, "Mom, some of Brent's colleagues are arriving soon and we're going to need this table for overflow. Do you think you could maybe head out? Ubers are running fine, and I'll call you tomorrow." I looked at her face. She was smiling, but it was the smile she used in professional situations, controlled, efficient, already looking past you. I said, "This is my daughter's wedding, and you are my daughter." She said, "Mom, please don't make this a thing." I put my napkin on the table. I picked up my purse. I said goodnight to Paulette, who was looking at me with an expression I haven't been able to forget. I walked out through the barn doors and across the gravel lot, and I called myself an Uber. And I stood in the cold under a sky with no stars, and I waited. The drive home took 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire way. The driver was a young man who played something soft on the radio and did not try to talk to me. I was grateful for that. Some kindnesses are small and perfect. I got home at 11:12. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, not because I forgot to turn the light on, but because I preferred it that way. The dark was quiet. It didn't require anything from me. I thought about all the invitations I had addressed by hand. I thought about the rehearsal dinner and the $22 salads. I thought about the dress fitting in September when Lucinda had said, standing beside me in front of the three-way mirror, "You look so good, Mom. Brent's family is going to love you." And I thought about a piece of paper on a laptop screen that would have taken this house from me. I didn't sleep that night. Not properly. I lay in the bed I had shared with my husband for 28 years, and I looked at the ceiling, and I made a decision. The call came at 9:43 the next morning. I was already dressed, already waiting. "Mom, it's me." Her voice was lighter than it had any right to be. "I just wanted to say last night was so beautiful, wasn't it? We're so happy. Listen, I was thinking, while we're still in all this legal mode with the marriage certificate and everything, maybe now's a good time to move forward on the house paperwork. Brent's lawyer can have it ready by Wednesday. You just need to—" I let her talk. I held the phone, and I let her reach the end of it. Then I said, I've spoken to my own lawyer. I'm not signing the house over. Not now, not in the future. This house stays in my name until I decide otherwise. Silence. Not a long silence. Just enough. Mom. Her voice had changed. Tighter now. We've talked about this. It makes financial sense. I heard what your financial advisor said. My lawyer explained what the document actually means, and my answer is no. I'm being clear. I heard myself say it. Calm. The way my grandmother was calm. That is different from being difficult. She said some other things after that. Her voice climbed and then leveled out and then climbed again. She said I was punishing her. She said I was making the early days of her marriage about myself. She said she couldn't believe I would do this to her. I waited until she was finished. Then I said, I love you. That has not changed. But I am not going to sign away the thing your father and I built together. That is my answer. I ended the call. I sat there for a while. The phone was warm in my hand. Outside, the birch trees were exactly as orange as they had been the day before. I called Ruth Ann. She answered on the second ring, and I told her everything, from the barn to the call. And when I was finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, Are you okay? I thought about it honestly. Not the automatic kind of okay, the real kind. I said, I think I will be. I called Mr. Okonkwo that afternoon. I told him I wanted to update my will. I told him I wanted to establish a clear record of ownership, dated, documented, and I wanted it to reflect my intentions without ambiguity. He asked me what those intentions were. I thought about the rose bushes out front. I thought about my husband laughing off camera in Cape Breton. I thought about 214 envelopes and 46 people and a woman in her 60s in Hamilton who talked to me about her kitchen renovation for the better part of an hour. I said, This house stays mine for as long as I'm here. After that, I'll decide. He said, That is entirely your right. We made an appointment for the following Thursday. The calls from Lucinda continued for a few weeks. They were not warm calls. They were calls that moved through several stages: anger, negotiation, something that tried to sound like concern but was shaped wrong. Brent called once, which surprised me. He was professional and polished and made a case, and I listened to all of it, and at the end I told him that I appreciated his perspective and that my answer remained the same. He thanked me and hung up, which told me more about him than anything he had said. In December, the calls slowed. By January, they had mostly stopped. Paulette checks on me every couple of weeks. She brought a lasagne in February, and we ate it at my kitchen table, and she told me, carefully, that she had heard through the family that Lucinda and Brent were looking at a condo in Etobicoke, that they seemed fine, that life was continuing. I told her I was glad, and I was. Whatever it was between my daughter and me, whatever distance had grown or been built or had always been there and I just hadn't seen it, I did not want her unhappy. I wanted her to have a life. I just wanted to have mine. Ruth Ann came over in March, and we sat on the back step with coffee and watched the first real thaw drip off the eaves. She asked me if I missed her. I said, I missed the daughter I thought I had. She said, That's an honest answer. I said, It's the only kind I have left. The rose bushes are coming back now. They do that every spring, even without anyone asking them to. There's a stubbornness in plants like that. In anything that has had enough time and enough reason to root deep, you can cut them back. You can have a difficult winter. You can stand in the dark and wonder if they'll come back at all. And then they do. My phone rang again this morning. I looked at the screen. It was Lucinda. I sat with it for 3 full rings. I thought about the barn. I thought about the gravel parking lot and the cold and the absence of stars. I thought about the document on the laptop screen and the chamomile tea in the dark and the lawyer's voice saying this document does not protect you. I thought about my grandmother. about the kind of stubbornness that looks from the outside like dignity. I answered. I said, "Hello." She said, "Mom," and then she stopped. And the stopping felt different from before. Less managed, more like something had broken open a little. "Mom, I've been thinking." I didn't rush her. I've spent enough of my life rushing past the difficult parts of conversations to the easier ground on the other side. I waited. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to say I'm sorry for something I can barely admit I did." I looked at the rose bushes through the window. I said, "Start there. Start with barely." There was a long pause, the kind that holds something. And then my daughter started to talk, and I sat in the kitchen my husband built, in the house that is mine. And for the first time in a very long time, I listened. Not every wound closes cleanly. Not every door that opened into cold and dark leads back to warmth right away. I know that. I knew it that morning, and I know it now. What I also know, what I learned somewhere between the parking garage on Larch Street and the first green shoot on the rose canes, is that a woman does not have to give away what she has built in order to prove that she loves someone. That is not what love asks for. Love asks you to stay. It does not ask you to disappear.